last week of values, words of the year. And that's exactly what I said. So I'm just going to say walking our values, embracing our values, and words of the year. And I've loved this year. I've loved this session so far because every time we talk, it brings up another layer. Again, last week when we were talking about, the fact that sometimes words can be, and I was talking about Maslow, we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which sometimes isn't necessarily a stack. It's more of like a circular thing because one feeds into the other. And I know that myself yesterday, when we choose words, when we use words, sometimes there's a deeper meaning to that word, and it can open up stuff that that you may or may not be aware of. So one of the great things these days, one of the buzzwords, it's, and we talk about it a lot here, is big T, small t trauma. And what is trauma? It's really, when we're looking at that, it's, I think we can both agree that this is the term that we're using is basically the body's ability or the mind's ability to be able to cope with what's going on at that moment. So I'm going to use one of the big ones, and that is spanking. Like, for a lot of people, it's like, oh yeah, well, your mom used to take out a wooden spoon. Well, I have to say there's a difference between somebody patting you on the butt on a diaper and somebody hauling off and belting you in the face. There's a difference between those two things, although both of them are disciplined from back in the day. So the deeper interesting part is that our body can store stuff, because if we can't deal with that at that point in time, maybe we could the week before, maybe we've never had a problem, but at that time it was overwhelming for us, especially if something that happened when we were kids. And that can stay stored in the body until we release it. So when we innocently use these words, or we use them because we want to be courageous, we want to be, I talked before about, I want to bring all that I am and all that I can be to everything I do. I do like to do that. I like to show up 100%, but I also realized that there was nothing in that mission statement that had anything to do with making sure that I was taking care of me first. So when it comes down to using words, and especially words that might sound really bold, right? Is that they might bring up stuff like, I believe my statement of I want to be a fit, strong, and healthy 160 pounds led to this whole PTSD thing, because the number of things that had to happen for that door to be able to open, which I have to say that was a total gift, because now that crap isn't in there anymore. But the one thing that always happens is like, oh, well, I had this issue with my dad or this issue in my family. And you think that those big issues might be the issues. And you have to be prepared that it's like, oh, that wasn't the thing. It was this small, seemingly tiny thing over here that I've actually got this pain in my heart for. And so when we choose these words, hopefully our intention, or mindfully our intention, is that it's always in our highest and best good to release whatever may come up, to embrace whatever may come up. As I've said before, like things like anxiety and fear, they have a seat at the table. You just can't live there, right? They can come and visit, but you want to be able to say, okay, what are you trying to tell me? So that they can move along and so that you can live your life. So this is just the one thing. And again, one of the things that that I know this weekend, for instance, I had something that I thought was a thing, and it turned out to be something completely different. And so part of that is like, okay, well, I'm going to sit in this and continue writing this out. I had no idea where that came from, but because my objective, or the whole reason, everything that I'm doing here is to get to know myself better and to keep clearing the light of my heart so that I can love as much as I can. that is my driving focus, even the middle of the stuff that's not really comfortable. So that's my little opening, Aisha. How's that for a ramble?
Well, it's an opening, and it's actually a very spacious opening. So thank you for that. Um, the what's coming up for me as I hear you talk about it is really the courage that's required to do this work. So you do need to have the courage to be able to pursue the healing, right? Uh, and it's not to say the people that don't pursue healing are not also courageous, because at the end of the day, we're all coping as we can with the tools that we have in any given moment. And we need to really acknowledge that in ourselves, because this is also, we live in a society where, and you're talking about big T trauma and little T trauma, you know, um, how many of us actually have the wherewithal and we have the stamina and the actual understanding to be able to withstand the kind of messaging that we receive from society, from the people that are around us, that are constantly in judgment of where we are and what we're doing, right? So I think that, this should always be at its very core. It needs to be a self-loving and a self-caring process at the very core of it. And this is not about, I need to do this or I have to do this. No, because that's not going to work. What you want to do, if you choose, your assignment, if you choose to accept it, is that,
Don't.
is that uh, you choose a different path for yourself.
Mhm.
And it's not the path necessarily that everyone else is going to take, but it's the path that actually makes the most sense for you. And for me, uh, part of the journey this year is in my overarching word is expansiveness, and one of my supporting words is fearless honesty. And fearless honesty looks different in different places, and I want to just talk about two places that I was originally going to just talk about one thing, but now, Gwenda, listening to what you've shared, I want to talk about also that fearless honesty means being able to acknowledge to yourself that someone has hurt you. Because a lot of times what we're trying to do, even in trauma, is that we're trying to protect the person that hurt us, right? We're thinking about, I can't acknowledge that my parent, my sibling, my best friend, my uncle, my whoever really hurt me or devastated me. I can't even go there. And so you don't get a chance, you don't have that opportunity to heal yourself, right? And this doesn't mean that if acknowledgement doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with accusation
Mhm.
or confrontation. It can, if that's a part of your healing process that you're comfortable with, but it doesn't have to. The very first thing is when you acknowledge to yourself, you have that fearless honesty with yourself. You know what? I was brave at that time and I didn't know how to advocate for myself, or I didn't know better. And I just absorbed that. And then I really love my XYZ person, and I didn't want to hurt them in the way that they were hurting me, so I didn't say anything. And then you don't want to think badly of them because they mean so much to you. Like the thing is that those things are not mutually exclusive.
Mhm.
People who love us can hurt us very deeply. People who are providing care for us can also be abusive.
Mhm.
People who support us and praise us in one way can devastate us in another. This is life.
Mhm.
This is what happens in life. Things are not, they're not on one plane. There's all kinds of things going on all the time. And so when we are able to understand that, it makes it easier for us to even just acknowledge to ourselves fearlessly and honestly what we experienced, and to be able to validate that for ourselves. And at that point, you don't need anybody else's validation. You just need to know for yourself, oh, this thing really hurt me, really devastated me. It caused me trauma, right? And those levels of pain will be different. There will be things that you can say, this was painful for me. And I never acknowledged that it was my so and so's responsibility that they caused me that pain, but I'm going to acknowledge that today, and I'm going to come to peace with that pain. And then on the larger side of the spectrum is the trauma, is that you actually need to do more work because you have withstood something that was so painful for you that you're still carrying. You're carrying so much of it as you go, right? How do you deal with that? So that's one part of fearless honesty. And my part of fearless honesty that I wanted to talk about was about values. And that is that you don't have to judge yourself for your values, even if other people are judging you. If you are confident in yourself about what your values are, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not somebody who is, you know, that keen on recycling, that's okay. You know what? Okay. Like everybody else is recycling, great. You know, but you're like, you know, when you get the chance, you throw something in the garbage that should go into recycling. You know, I say blessing to you. It's, you know, it's not the best, but why are you going to really judge yourself for that, right? And that's just a very small example. But the thing is that just be honest with yourself about who you are, right? And if in time you decide that some value that you have no longer serves you, that you feel like you want to go in a different direction with it, then go in a different direction with it. Don't meet yourself where you are in this moment, exactly in this moment, without any illusion or delusion about who you are. Just accept it. There are things about myself that I don't like. There are things that I've done in the past that I think, you know, I really shouldn't have done that, or I wish I had the opportunity to go back and apologize to that person, right? Or geez, I was really shitty when I did this. Like, okay, that doesn't mean that I'm a horrible person. It means that I made mistakes. It means that I'm human. It means that that's who I was in that part of my journey, right? And I think you mentioned also talking about yourself and understanding that this is something that came from my younger self. Mm-hmm. This is something that came from my first family, right? And so it's a value that I hold. I don't think it's the best value for me. I'm not sure I know how to do right now. That's okay. Just be honest with yourself. And then, because also if you're not honest with yourself, you actually can't change it at the end of the day. If you're constantly hiding yourself so that you look good to other people, you're not going to be able to change it. Just accept it. Just accept who you are, where you are right now in this time. And then when the time is right for you, if there's something in your values that you want to choose to change, you're going to be able to do that. What do you think about that, Gwen?
Amen, sister. Like, oh my God. Wow. Perfect. Amazing. So, two things that I want to tag on to that. I think just provide a little bit more clarity from almost like a process, right? Because when we choose to heal, we have to know ourselves enough to say, okay, this is a thing. What am I going to do with that? Am I going to dive into that now? Am I going to put it in a back pocket for later? Whatever. But I think the one thing that you talked about that is huge is that we need to hold space for our own story, right? And you're right. Like, okay, my mom did this, like, you know, I love my mother and all that, but she used to love like open palm right across your, and that's not good, right? But you know what? Do I think she hated me? No. But the whole thing there is the difference between, and this is the thing, we ended up talking about all this stuff. Because the first part, you don't have to necessarily talk about whatever stuff is happening around you, but you need to be able to hold a safe space with somebody that you trust where you can tell your whole story, where little Gwenda can tell her whole story, where little Aisha has the point to say, but daddy, that hurt my feelings. And just say it out loud, because once that happens, you know, and this is even in friendships or even in siblings, you may have done something 1,000 years ago, you know, when we're kids. And as an adult, if like my sister at one point, you know, said, oh, you did this. And I heard her friend describing this episode. And it was like, bullying, and it was really horrible. But this was the first time I was in her world as an adult. And it was like, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And you could see her literally like breathe a little deeper, because like that wasn't my intention. Was it? I mean, looking at it in the way that I just heard it, like, oh my God. But I was also like, you know, 13 years old and not in a great space myself. Again, so our who we are is not defined by one thing we do, but as Oprah would say, when we know better, we do better. But that doesn't take away from that little Gwenda or the little Aisha being able to say, okay, speak your piece. And that once you speak your piece, it just literally doesn't become a thing anymore, because even if you hug that little one inside, the inner child, so it's holding the space for us to tell our story honestly, honestly. And if you can't do that and you can't find the right people to do that, at least write it down. Like, get it out somewhere where it has a physical space, because this episode is taking up energetic space in your body. So you almost have to go, okay, I don't want this here anymore. You know, whenever we see those ghost movies on TV and they go into the body and they come out, that's what we have to do. The other thing is, oh my God, the forgiveness, right? That um, hopefully you get the courage, if you have done something. I mean, that's the 12-step programs, isn't it? That you make amends for what you've done. You take ownership. And part of that is actually, it frees you, right? Because you don't have to lie. And more importantly, I mean, that all comes to, you know, one of my things I talked about last week, live life with bold integrity. I want to be that person that, you know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say. And sometimes people don't tell me because they know what I'm going to say. Now, will I not embrace them and help them at that time too? But you know what I'm going to say, right? So I think that consistency for any of us, right? To know that you can come and talk to me about whatever you want to talk about, and I'll create that safe space for you. But it's important to give that moment in time space to breathe and to forgive and to release. So thank you again, as always. You're so eloquent. You just
You, my dear, you open the door, you make it spacious, you share all these bravely, courageously share all these experiences that give us the opportunity to really get into it. So thank you as well. It's beautiful.
fearless
I just want
honesty.
to add also, yeah,
Yeah, go on.
fearless honesty, right? I
I
just
love
want
it.
to add to what you're saying is also that that stories can coexist.
Mhm.
I mean, you don't have to, in order to connect with someone, you don't necessarily have to agree with their version of events. You don't have to necessarily um, take responsibility for stuff that actually doesn't belong to you. What you
Nice.
can do though is that you can you can say that you understand.
Mhm.
You can say that I recognize that what I did, that you experienced it in a way I didn't intend, just like you said, that that wasn't my intention, and I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused.
Mhm.
Right. So
Mhm.
you can certainly be able uh, to show your compassion and your love for someone. If you're on the side where you have to take responsibility, you can show your love and compassion to that person, uh, even if you both have a different version of events,
Mhm.
right? And that's something that's really important, because what we're missing out on, and this is something that I'm going to be talking about in my own leadership coaching practice, is, you know, the art of civil discourse, is that we don't understand how to agree to disagree. It's a lost art. And, you know, many moons ago, people could have conversations that were completely on polar opposites with each other, and still go out afterwards and have a drink
Mhm.
and not feel like, no, I need to shut you down because you don't agree with me, or
Mhm.
no, I can't listen to you because you're so on the other side. No, you know, and I think that that's something that we want to continue to cultivate.
Mhm.
And 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 just to finish off, I think, you know, uh the fearless honesty piece is is around just being whole, because we are light and dark.
Mhm.
We are light and shadow. And this idea that we have to be light all the time, or that we can't be wrong about anything, or that we have to try and be perfect. I mean, it's toxic. It is a
Mhm.
toxic ideology, and something that needs to change, because we're not perfect. And this is part of the reasons why we are so polarized right now, is because everybody is trying to project this perfection and look for this perfection. And then there's no, then how do we connect with each other? How do we actually find space to be human, right? So a lot of this is just about holding space for your own wholeness, allowing yourself to step fully into who you are. And I love that you talked about forgiveness. Yesterday there was if any of you are on Mind Valley, if you are subscribed to their um, email list, mindvalley.com. There's lots of resources out there.
Mhm.
I'm sharing this one because this is what came across my desk. And what I did yesterday is they did spirituality of forgiveness, and it was an amazing 90-minute free class where they talked about different techniques of forgiveness, like one particular technique that actually was really powerful. I mean, I was sobbing at one point,
Mm.
and it was about self-forgiveness,
Mm.
first of all, before forgiving anyone else, because it was so powerful. But you also have to be in that space to be ready to forgive.
Mhm.
You have to be ready to act. You have to have that opening of self-love, and be ready to let things go. Because also, when we don't forgive, remember that that's somehow serving us.
Yeah.
That's giving us something. That's why we're not able to do it, because it's serving us in some way. So, there's a lot of excavation that needs to happen, and it requires that fearless honesty to start it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think because that's the whole thing, isn't it, about forgiveness? And that's, the other thing is, again, with the way that we store stuff in our body, which it's been proven more and more now that it doesn't come from up here and go down, it comes from here and goes up. Like, again, getting into what my paddling days where, we're on the way to China and all of a sudden this arm isn't working. Well, why isn't this arm working with, you know, ultrasounds and all the rest of that stuff? Oh, you mean, it was under my back at a point when I was 15 and and so that held that. So we can try to, I think the biggest challenge is we can rationalize stuff, but we have to be able to sit in our heart to forgive, right? And forgive does not mean, as you said, responsibility for your own actions are left to you, whoever. In the case with my sister, that was me. And the second I heard that story, I apologized. The second I heard it, not that we hadn't laughed and joked about it in a familial way, where it was like, oh, you remember when we did this? Well, that's sort of bullying too, right? You can bully your siblings. And but again, when you know better, you do better, right? So I think that it's really important to, as you say, is to honor that. But forgiving does not mean forgetting or letting anybody off the hook, or taking somebody else's responsibility on yourself. And I love that you brought that point up, because that's oh, again, we could do another 14 hours of this. And that's why I love having a chat with you, because it always goes like here and everything wide and narrow. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, out of the main thing is whatever you choose to do, it's always good to have a focus, right? Because there are times where you can take something and you can feel something coming up and you go, yeah, you know what? I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to take that and put it in my pocket. But you owe it to yourself to, at one time, with the right space, say, okay, buddy, let's start a conversation, because it does start with yourself, and it does start with acknowledging, and I mean, this is self-love, self-worth, self-esteem, whatever, acknowledging that you have the right to your pain, that you
Yeah.
have the right to whatever story you're telling, whether it's the victim or the survivor or the, when you get to that place where it's just a story, and you're not doing it from that rawness of trying to stand on your feet, and you're not doing it from that feisty, I'm a badass, I'm a survivor. You're just doing it from and again, everybody's process is different, but you got to be able to, as you say, honestly, because you close that door at night, it's just you and you, right? And holding that all in, you're not putting on a show for anybody, right? You're just lessening your full experience, because if we can't feel the down stuff, we also can't totally feel the good stuff, right? The joy, and that includes the grief of a relationship that you thought was something that it was, and it turns out not to be. And then it can be something as normally transitional, like your grade, your kids are going on to university and they're leaving that's great. It's a happy time. It doesn't mean you can't grieve the fact that they're no longer kids and they no longer are depending on you and they're spreading their wings. You've got to be able to honor that grief too, right? And that emotionality, and nobody's in the wrong there. It's just life, right? So I think it's really important. Just the most important is to know when your body's saying, okay, I need to go here. I need to unpack something,
Mhm. Yeah. I completely agree with you. And I love what you talked about just now around, around relationships, and just going back to the idea that it's not all or nothing, that relationships can be a little bit of something and a little bit of something else and a little bit of something else. So when we romanticize or we fantasize about what things are, we're not giving ourselves ourselves the opportunity to really recognize the breadth and the depth of the relationship, which is that some things are good, some things are not so good, and, some things are just, just were the way they were. It's not anybody's fault. Like you said earlier, that's just the way that it was, right? And I just want to touch quickly on the issue of change. And that is to be gentle with yourself through this process, because there are going to be times where you may not see any movement. And like you were saying earlier, there's always movement, right? Even if you don't see it, even if you don't see the difference or you don't see a change right away, because you're processing, because you're moving through it, you may need a moment or two or a day or a week or a month to just be in that space, to allow yourself to process it from the body and from the mind and from the heart and from the spirit. You need to have that opportunity to do that. Sometimes you're going to want to change, but you're not going to be able to quite do it. You might have the best of intention that, okay, this week I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then when the week is over, you've done none of that stuff. And that's not an invitation to beat yourself up. That's an invitation to reflect on, what did you need? What kind of supports did you need? What kind of time did you need? What kind of space did you need to make it happen that didn't happen this time? And what can you put in place to make sure that you're able to at least do one or two of those things the next time? It's not about, this is, like I said, going back to, this is a self-loving journey. This is a self-caring journey. You're not in competition with anyone. You are just, if you want to start making healthier choices, that means you need to reflect. It means that you're gentle with yourself and that you allow yourself to make mistakes, because also the thing is that you learn from those. When you don't make any mistakes, you don't really learn. You're just kind of following this ideology, which, it may or may not be working for you, but if you make mistakes, you learn.
Oh,
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's amazing. This is, and so now we're at 7:31, and I think, we try to keep it around 30 minutes, but we end up yammering. And again, because I love what you say. And so, but so what we're going to do is our next month, which is February, we are going to deal with the lovely light topic of death and dying. And it's not light, but Aisha's going to really be leading the charge on that. Like, by that, I mean, because being raised by a gerontological nurse, and you know, having 17 people that died by the time I was 20, I've gone through quite a bit. I also have that little, you know, the chapter in a book, Wrestling with the Urn. So the one thing that I find is that when I talk about it, I tend to come at it from you know, a different standpoint than most people. So, and I think, Aisha, you have some questions these days on that, in that area, or some things that you'd like to. So what's going to happen is, for the next month, we are going to follow our structure, which is going to be, we're going to have 3 weeks where it's us. And then the 4th week, we're bringing in somebody who's actually a death doula, a grief recovery specialist, and a hospice worker who specializes in that kind of stuff. So as we go along, I know it's going to be a challenging time. This is a challenging subject. And again, when we talk about self-love and being gentle with yourself, this is where, you know, everybody, sometimes you don't even know how you're going to react or respond. You don't. So it's important to be able to create that safe space where we can talk about it. So if you guys have any questions that you want to see, or anything that you want to know more about, then please message us. But I'm going to leave it to Aisha, so she'll be leading the charge next week, and we'll see. Well, I mean, I'm here, you know, but we'll see where it goes, you know. And again, fearless honesty. I love that. We should actually just talking fearless honesty. No.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely.
I think it's perfect. So that's,
yeah.
Well, that's now we've just poached that. Well, it's our thing anyway. So yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
we'll see you all next week, the same time. And we'll let you know where we're starting. But again, it's going to be any topic. So anything in that realm, if you have a question, please let us know. And I love you, and I love talking with you, and I love your mind and where we go in conversations. And I'm just so glad that I'm on this journey with you here.
Oh, me too, love. I am so grateful that you came to me and said, hey, do you want to do this? Because it has provided such an opportunity to grow, to learn. And, you know, I think what I love about our connection and about how we do this is that we do have different perspectives. We have different experiences. And when we share that, we really give each other the opportunity to learn and to grow. And so I just want to tell you that I learn a lot from you, and I grow a lot when I'm with you, and I love you. And I definitely am just so grateful that we're together on this journey and that you're in my life as my friend. Thank you.
Agreed. Love you. Love you. Back at you. Everything times 1,000. And I really wish I had your eloquence and your, nope, we're just going to fine tune it, that's one of the other main reasons. Cause I know anybody have to follow me. It's like a roller coaster ride, right? So it goes all over the place. So love you.
Such good points though. You doesn't matter, because you just bring all this stuff in that is worth discussing in that realm. You know, sometimes you don't, I mean, it's not a question of what's better or worse. Sometimes you don't want everything to be on a straight line. Sometimes you need to go in a few different directions to really get a sense of what something is. So thank you for that.
And that's why there's 2 of us, right? Right? You got to have the yin and the yang, right? So everybody, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for watching. And
thanks, everyone.
These videos are on Gwenda Lambert Life Starts Now YouTube, as well as being on this page. And we are going to be having a Just Talking page that's coming sooner than later, hopefully sooner than later. So love you, Aisha. I wish you all the best. Okay.
Thank you, you too, Gwenda. Love you guys. See you soon.
See you guys next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.